Welcome to episode 13 of Bread and Butter, everybody, the Hearthstone podcast where we're serving up the basics the average player needs for Hearthstone improvement. Today we have a very special guest of Battlegrounds acclaim, Pocky Plays. Pocky, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing pretty good. Been a nice, relaxing day. Tito, how about you?
I'm doing all right. A little sick, a little stressed from last night. We had a little event, but other than that, I'm doing pretty good.
Nice. So, Pocky, what have you been doing outside of Hearthstone and inside of Hearthstone? Anything you'd like to share?
Mostly relaxing. The new year's been sort of going fast. We're already 3 weeks in, but yesterday was Chinese New Year, so I celebrated by doing probably my longest stream ever, which isn't super unrelated from Hearthstone, but it's kind of fun. And yeah, been following sports. Unfortunately, the football season didn't end the way I wanted it for either of my teams, the Vikings and the Seahawks.
You're a Hawks fan too? Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, a little rough playoffs this year, but I've got the basketball season. Everyone starts following basketball after the NFL season's over, so falling back on that.
So happy New Year. If I ask what year, so this is the year of the rabbit, which year were you born in?
I'm a dog. I'm a dog on the
nice.
Chinese zodiac.
Nice. I've been learning a little bit about that. It's very interesting. My friend, a coworker of mine, is also a year of the rabbit, so I guess it's a little more special when it's your year, your birth year, and the year in parallel. How about
Yeah.
How about yourself, Doc? What have you been up to?
So yesterday, my partner and I, we celebrated our 1-year anniversary, which was really dope. We went to a nice restaurant here in St. George, which honestly is too nice for what this town deserves. Had some amazing food. There was a couple that was seated relatively close to us that was celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. And so they got serenaded by a musician and their 2 children. So my partner and her and I both also got to hear their entire conversation and all the songs that they got to play. And it was a good time. Inside or still outside Hearthstone, I've been playing a lot of Stellaris, which is like a spacefaring galactic expansion RTS. It's really fun. It's just really complicated, especially for like how RTSs are complicated. Standard and BGs for me are just in like this weird spot where like I'm not having a lot of fun in Standard. I've maybe played like 5 games since last week. And then BG wise, I've played like 12 to 15 lobbies, but I've gained maybe 25 MMR. Just having a really hard time figuring out how to play. So being able to pick your brain, Pocky, is going to be very nice for me. I got like 4th place with Elementals today, which I didn't mean to pivot Elementals, but it happened and it worked okay. But Undead just seem pretty dang good right now.
Yeah, certainly the way to go in Battlegrounds right now. Congratulations on the 1 year. That's
thank
big.
you.
And Battlegrounds. I've been actually playing a lot of Battlegrounds. I've played. So typically I don't play off stream, but I've played at the beginning of metas just because everything's fresh and new. Get a little bit of that drive back, and I've been playing a decent amount. I think I played maybe 6 to 8 games off stream, which, like I said, that's a lot for me. That's infinite times more than 0. So. I was playing TFT before the patch, and I was really enthralled with it. I think it's a really fun TFT set if anyone sort of doubles up in the auto battler genre. But I haven't touched it since the Battlegrounds patch. I almost feel like I'm neglecting it. I'm going to lose the skills.
They definitely push different skills between both games. I'm only like silver 3 in TFT, but man, when you get like because there's a bunch of wacky comps. Just Yumi is the overlord of the meta right now, which is funny because people are just getting killed by a cat writing a book. But yeah, I enjoy this TFT set too.
Now, do you play Snap too, Pocky, or?
I did, but I've kind of dropped it in the past month or so, just because the monetization was a bit much for me, and it was fun to play daily, but how much they were asking for just to sort of stay competitive, I didn't want to make the investment, so I haven't played it in a few weeks now, but I was playing it daily for months. I got in to the beta early, so I had the full tier 3 or series 3 collection. So it feels a little weird to just drop it, but I was mostly free to play, so I don't feel too bad.
Yeah, I only buy the season every season so far. This is the third season I bought, but that's the only thing I pay for. And I like it as a game that I can play that fills that itch, but it lasts real quick, and I don't care about my rank. I'm like rank 30. I play Thanatos decks all the time, and I don't care. It's just fun. And Doc, you were playing it for a while, but you also kind of went off away from it, right?
Yeah, I really dislike how the collection levels work and how, I mean, I know they've changed it a little bit, but not being guaranteed like cards without a specific way to craft them whenever you want to is a really big feels bad for me. But I did start playing again after our conversation with Matt last week. I've probably played like 15, 20 games, and I've won like 11 or 12 of them. Just doing Odin on reveal because that's like the only deck I really have everything for.
I think if they went the route that Magic the Gathering goes, and you get these wild cards, Magic Gathering Online, you get the wild cards and be like, okay, hey, you have a Series 3, make whatever you want. And then like you still do the same collection levels, you still go as slow as you want, but it's not like, did I get lucky and get Deadpool when I wanted Deadpool? It's like, okay, I got a card, Deadpool's the one I want next, let me go get him. I think it covers the needs of the player, but it also keeps them in that kind of pacing they want to have.
Yeah, I think that would be a healthy change for the game for sure.
Yeah, that'd be super interesting.
I think it would definitely alleviate some of the concerns people have about their collections, because at least they could target what they want and build the decks that they're looking for. Ben Brode, if you need more ideas, you know where to find me.
Yeah.
And as for me, Doc, Hades still has the scripts in me. I started playing at the beginning of the month because Hades 2 was announced. I never played Hades because I was always told it wasn't great on the PC. Some people alleviated me of that fact, and I still think it probably is not as good as it is on console, but I picked it up because it was on sale, and it just grabbed me. I think I have over 90 hours in this month, and it's
Nice.
It's fun. I thought I had an idea of where Hades 2 was going to go to until I continued to play long after the credits, and there's even more story. It is a lot of fun. It is a great game. And we had our event last night. We had the show match between Wicked Good and Sidisi, Hunter versus Priest. Some technical issues. I also had a sick dog at the time, so things were a little chaotic. But it was still a fun event. Sidisi ended up winning 3-1. I think fun was had by all, and I think we're going to try to do another one of those in the future to see who will win. And maybe we'll do another grudge match, and I was thinking about maybe extending it up to 4 matches. But the VODs are up on my Twitch, and the audio quality, like I said, is a little problematic, but overall the event was a lot of fun. I've been playing not so much standard. I hit legend, and then I just kind of, every time I log in, because my MMR, like we've talked about, is so low, I came in at around 2,000. I log in 3 days later, it's at like 5,000. I log in a couple days later, it's like 7,000. I'm water meets its level, and I'm hitting to where I belong, I suppose. As soon as I hit legend, I had some problems I think I lost like the first 3 games I played, and I was like, all right, I'm done. But I went in, I started climbing some ranks again, but I decided I wanted to just mix it up a little bit and start working on Wild, because I wanted to become double legend at some point, and I'm only at 4 stars in Wild, which is kind of a long haul to get back to where I want to be. And I picked up a Death Knight, Unholy Death Knight Even deck, and that hero power at 1 is really good. I went 15-1 in one session, and I really like it. So I'll probably apparently it's the best deck in the meta. I had no idea when I picked it. I just said, all right, hey, this deck, I want to play some Death Knight so I can start getting the wins on that and have some fun. And it just looked like a good deck, and turns out it's really good. I haven't run into any control yet, so I don't know how I'm going to do if I start hitting big priests and things like that, the Shutterwalk Shamans and all that. But for now, at least at the levels I'm playing, it's easy to cruise in. But I don't know. I'm starting to get a little hungry, Doc. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think it's about time for some appetizers. So Pocky, tell us about your history in video games and how you got started on Hearthstone.
Ooh, that's a good question. So, I mean, my first intro to video games was on PC, like PC games back, as a kid, playing stuff like Backyard Baseball and some of those educational games like Freddy Fish and Putt Putt Saves the Zoo. I think like anyone that's like my generation probably knows what I'm talking about.
So I do have that era of game question for you. Did you ever play Where is Carmen Sandiego?
Not like myself, but my friends had. So I played via watching.
Yeah,
because that's as a kid, it's like you go over to someone's house and you would just watch other people game, and you'd be totally cool with it, And I think that I have another friend that we talked about. There was 3 of us as kids that 2 of us were obviously worse at gaming. We all knew it, it's just how it was. If you were talking about last person rotates out, that was us. And then one of us was really good because he had older brother, so he had he had the training or whatever, and he was just always the best. So we were watching him. We just we're used to watching him. He could get through the hard parts of missions and stuff that we got stuck on. And fast forward to Twitch, it's watching other people play games. That's fun. It's kind of funny how it goes. That it's we've been training our whole life for this. We can watch people play game. But
it's hard explaining that to other people that don't understand too, right? Yeah, people watch me play video games and they're like, what?
Yeah, it really is but there is this satisfaction to the shared experience, right? Like anything else, right? It's going to a movie theater and watching with other people is different than if you were to just watch a movie on your phone in bed. Now that's not to say that that's not fun in its own right, but it's a different experience, So yeah, and then I guess N64 I got as a hand-me-down, and then my first console was the Wii that I got for myself. But really what got me into Hearthstone was Yu-Gi-Oh! I played Yu-Gi-Oh! From Legend of Blue Eyes, it came out, that same thing, all of it, my little friend group as kids, we all got into Yu-Gi-Oh! Because that's what people were doing. That's also, it was newer, and I don't know, we also collected Pokemon cards, but we never played, right? But Yu-Gi-Oh! We played the game.
I'm looking forward to
the card game, I should say.
I'm looking forward to the whole Pokemon Online thing, which I guess is in beta or coming out right now, because my son likes to collect these Pokemon cards, and I've been getting for him, but I have no idea how to play. We went through the basics. We did a basic game, but you got all these different rules and things, and I wanna sit down and understand how to play it so I can teach him, and I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, man.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, some of my early memories with card games was actually the opposite. I was the kid trying to teach my dad how to play Pokemon. way back then. And, it sort of happened because a lot of times you didn't have someone else to play with, right? So it's like,
Yep.
Dad, come on, can we play? And like that, I mean, that's like my intro to card games. So, I mean, that's absolutely you should. So,
Yeah, and Pokemon's a great game. Like, I still play it on a relative like frequent basis, and my brother like goes to regionals and stuff when he can, and goes to our local shop for it. It's a fun game. It seems like it's complicated, but like once you like play a couple games, it gets pretty easy to understand.
yeah, I was wanting to like get into the card game right before the pandemic to like go play at the shop and stuff, and then the pandemic happened. I like had a deck. I literally like bought a deck of like stuff. It was like I think it was like the tag team stuff, maybe like around
Oh
that.
yeah. Tag teams would have still been a thing. Like the popular deck at the time would have been like Pikarom.
Yeah, something. Yeah, so like around then, and then the pandemic happened. It was like, guess no. But yeah, but competitive Yu-Gi-Oh that was like my go-to for years, and started getting competitive later on in my career, and I really like hustled. It was expensive, so I played in college, like, and I didn't have a job at the time, so it was all like trading and buying and selling to not necessarily make a profit, but like to fund the decks, because it can get expensive. I mean, any card game player knows that new stuff comes out, power creep happens, and if you want to be competitive, you gotta have the newest stuff, the good stuff, and it's not cheap. Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like $100 a card sometimes, and so once it got to that point, I was like, man, this is just so expensive. And I had some friends in the competitive scene that played Hearthstone, so I was like, I had touched Hearthstone right when it came out, just because it was really popular on Twitch, and just like being around esports, you kind of heard about it, but it didn't hook me the first time. But after I sort of switched over from Yu-Gi-Oh, it hooked me, and I played it. It was pretty easy. I didn't put a ton of money into it or anything. It was so much cheaper than Yu-Gi-Oh. People complain about how expensive Hearthstone is, but I was just of the opposite mindset. I'm like, it's so cheap compared to Yu-Gi-Oh. Like, I'm not having to spend like $300 every couple of months just for a play set of cards. Like, this is great. I don't know what you guys are talking about. And then of course Battlegrounds came out, and I just I played it. I think I had the BlizzCon ticket that year for whatever reason, so I got Battlegrounds like the day it came out, and that is the first day I played, and I've played it since then. It really quickly just overtook. I was still doing 5 wins a month for card backs for a while, and then didn't even get the time for that because I was so hooked on Battlegrounds.
So what was it about Battlegrounds that drew you into the mode so hard?
I'm not sure. That like the competitiveness in the individual game was really cool. Like I definitely have this competitive bit of me that just wants to win, and winning a game of standard or constructed didn't give me the same high that like getting first in a game of Battlegrounds does, right? Like it's like 8 wins in one, Like I'm better than 7 other people, not just one, but 7 other people. And putting together these builds and stuff. I mean, I always enjoyed Arena. I was never good at it, but the way that Arena players are able to like draft these different decks out of just like whatever they're given, and then consistently do well. I always thought that was such a cool element of the game and of that mode. And Battlegrounds is similar, right? You don't know what you're gonna get. It's random, but through smart decision making, you can consistently do well. And so between those two things, I think that's probably what drew me to the mode. But overall, I mean, it is just a lot of fun. Just the gameplay and the strategy behind it. I've always been a big strategy person, so just that general stuff, it's great for that.
So what made you decide to get into content creation and then later into casting?
Well, content creation was, again, like the pandemic sort of drew it out of me. My first stream, I streamed like years ago one time, forgot to turn off my stream afterwards, was at work in the office the next day, and my friend's like, you know your stream's still on? I'm like, shit. Like, I heard stories about like people doing that, getting banned. I'm like, no. Like, I don't want to get banned. Like, it's an accident. So I like tried to figure out how to raid someone from my phone or host someone from my phone. People said like, then it'll be fine. And after that, I didn't stream for years. I was traumatized. But at the beginning of the pandemic is that very first week, I think the Friday of that week, I was just like, oh, what the heck, like, why not? And around that time, a little bit later on, I didn't realize how good I was. I think I was about 8K at the time, and there wasn't really information on, like, if you weren't on the leaderboards, you didn't have a great perspective of, where does that put, like, am I good? What is good even? A lot of people still don't know what is good because it comes down to, what your own standards are in that bar that you're setting. Mm-hmm. But a bit later on, I'd started watching Slissa and 12 Wins, now known as Sunbacon Relaxer, and, improving to the point that I saw on Ixar's tweet that like 8K was like top 0.1% or something. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty good. Like, maybe if I streamed this, some people could watch. And all I wanted to do was teach people how to play. Like, explain my thought process of plays that maybe other people could pick up from it. Because, like, otherwise I was like, what do I have to offer? Like, it's whatever. I'm not super entertaining. But maybe if I'm good enough, people will watch and I could learn, teach them and people can learn. And I did that. And I wrote a guide on Reddit that got pretty big. And just through chatting in different streams and stuff, people started to know me from all these different places. And, that's what grew my stream. Just sort of random happenstance and just really just being a part of the community is what got me to where I am. And then casting. So obviously the esports stuff, we got that esports news recently. Last year, we got the announcement for Lobby Legends. And I saw that and I'm a good player. I've said that, like, my list of achievements is, I think, pretty good. I won Twitch Rivals with a team. I've won tournaments. I've been on the Americas and EU leaderboards, like, on the front page at the same time. Been as high as rank 11. And with all those accomplishments, I don't think I'm that good. Like, when you say, like, playing in Lobby Legends, I'm like, that, I'm not cut out for it, Which sounds maybe like it's, underestimating my skills or something, but it's just a realization of, like, watching some of these other players, how good they are, and the fact that I'm even just a little bit worse than them, that's still a big gap, And so when they announced Lobby Legends, I'm like, that is, my goal is not to kind of go on that grind. At the time I was working, so I didn't even have the time to put in that kind of, commitment. And I had casted and hosted tournaments before, and it was a lot of fun. And like I said, I had this background in sports stuff, right? Like really being interested in sports. And of course, all sports, there's a standard with commentary, and having a really good broadcast team can make a game so much more engaging to the average fan. And I really wanted to bring that to Battlegrounds, and I thought I could. And I still think, now having done it more and had more experience co-casting Lobby Legends and then even officially casting the last Lobby Legends, which was a fantastic experience. I absolutely want to do more, in the future.
Yeah, so we kind of touched on the esports a little bit, and it is very unfortunate. And then since now you're mentioning the future, do you have any like plans or projects for this year?
Well, I definitely would like to cast more, whether that's through the getting another opportunity to cast Lobby Legends. If I'm that lucky, I'll be ecstatic. I know there's less this year, down to 3 tournaments, but I don't think that's a problem. I think that the big thing for Lobby Legends would be getting more eyes on it, more publicity on the event, and so having fewer isn't necessarily like a deal breaker in that regard. But I think that with fewer events, there's also this opportunity for more grassroots events to pop up again. In the past year, we've seen less and less. I had hosted a few tournaments, and in the last year, I was trying to host more, but it was like, you look at the schedule, there's qualifiers this week, and there's Lobby Legends this week, and there's this other event this week, and it's like, when am I going to have time to run something? And I don't think I was the only sort of community tournament organizer running into that. I think there was a week that I did run a tournament, and there was like 3 other tournaments running because everyone was like, this is the week. And it's like all of a sudden, people are double booked on stuff. And, which tournament did I register for first? Which one do I most want to play in? Am I going to have, is this one going to have more high level players? Do I really want to play against them? All these different things. And so I think with sort of less on the schedule, there's going to be an opportunity for more grassroots stuff. And I really hope that the community engages with it, because that's what drives, people to set them up and host them, right? It's a lot of work. So if you're not getting viewers or sponsors or even participants, like, it's kind, you need some incentive. That's just kind of the way it is. And yeah, I mean, hopefully there's more. I know there's a lot of people who really care deeply about the competitive scene in Hearthstone, and as discouraged as the esports announcements were, I don't think that has to be the end of competition in the game, right? We can just sort of have that, but then, really as a community come together and support what can still be a vibrant competitive scene.
And that I agree is like when Hearthstone, there was, if you'll believe it, there was at one point where we were complaining that there was almost too much Hearthstone esports because it was hard to keep track of. It was every weekend. It was there was almost too much going on, and like the grassroots things I think were always a lot of fun, like the Seat Story Cups and those kind of events were always great. So you're right. I like that there's an opportunity for, assuming Blizzard, doesn't put the kibosh on these kind of things, but for more grassroots kind of small things to fill that void and give other players opportunities. And I will say that the couple times I've caught you casting has been very entertaining. You have a great cadence. You explain things very well. It's it's you do a very good job. So I look forward to hearing more from you. And who would you say? Just one last question. Like you mentioned that you watched Alyssa and Sunbake and Relaxer. Who are some of your favorite people to watch? If you want people to go watch streamers besides yourself that are good at Battlegrounds and also teach kind of along that aspect, who would you suggest?
Oh, it's so hard because there's so many great players, and it depends. It depends on the viewer on how they learn. Some people learn by just watching the very best play, right? And they can sort of pick up all the things they're doing wrong from watching that, top tier gameplay. Others, it's helpful to have an explanation of why did you do that, and have an engaged chat where they can ask questions to the streamer and they'll explain them. And so there's so many great streamers for both styles. If you're looking for people that explain, I mean, Sissa is still fantastic. Victor, as long as you phrase the question, and some people have a tendency to maybe forget chat etiquette at times and say things about like, oh, isn't that a misplay? It's like, well, you can phrase the same thing as why did you do that? But if you hear that right, Victor's still great. Bofer's really good at explaining all his thoughts in the process of that. Lee HS, really high level player and always down to explain his thought process. Hoppa Bear is much like me. Really, really good about talking through every play she makes. Definitely recommend her. And I mean, most streamers, again, like if you ask in the right way, they'll be happy to explain. So it's all about finding someone that you engage well with, and if that's the way you want to learn, and even just engaging with the stream in the right way. It's one thing to watch, and it's another to watch with intent, right? If your goal is to get better, look at the decisions they're making and why they did that. Don't just like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like, if you want to learn, put your time into learning. It's there's like, do you guys have this thing with like TV shows where there's certain TV shows for me that I'll put on right before I go to bed? I'm not really trying to pay that much attention to them. I'm just trying to go to sleep. But like, I don't need to pay that much attention. It's fine for that show. And then other shows you're like, well, I want to, I want to watch this, Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the same thing, right? Like if you do want to get better, find a stream that you're going to watch and really take in everything. I mean, that could be any number of streams out there, and it's really just down to exploring. Sometimes smaller streamers are better for that because they're not going to have a chat that you're going to get drowned out. And sometimes, the big streamers are big for a reason, right? They're good. They got to where they were because they engage with chat. So it's just what you prefer. As long as you have the right mindset going in. I absolutely cannot choose a favorite, but I hopefully that list was good enough.
No, absolutely. And like you said, like you can learn a lot from watching Dog. He is an amazingly talented card game player, but he's not going to answer your questions. He has too many people in chat. There's thousands of people that watch him, so that's not the best engagement, but you still learn a lot. Excuse me, but like you were saying, Hap is great. Like she talks through her plays. She makes every effort to acknowledge every single person that chats with her and answers questions, and she's a phenomenal player on top of that. She plays on an alt a lot of times called Happa is Tilted, and that alt is usually around like 12K or more, and that's her like I'm not doing so well account. So you want to learn, she is definitely a great option as well. Well, I completely agree. I don't know, Doc. I'm starting to get a little hungrier though. You ready for the main course?
I sure am.
All right. So if you're here we're here to talk about Battlegrounds. That's why we have Pocky on, obviously. And I'm sure you're probably very excited to talk about things like Undead and Professor Putricide or whatever. And I promise you, we will talk about that at some point next week. We want to start off by giving people the basic primer for Battlegrounds. A lot of people don't go to Battlegrounds because even though it's free, even though it doesn't take too much, it's intimidating if you don't know what you're doing or you don't have the basics to go in. So some people go in, they get an 8th place, they say, I don't know what the heck just happened, and they never go on the mode again. That's kind of sad because Battlegrounds is a fantastic, fantastic game. So what we want to do here today is we want to start explaining what Battlegrounds are and how you play from the ground up, and build those skills and understand some of the lingo and some of the conversations that can happen around it. So
Sure.
So Pocky, the first thing that when someone comes in, they're prompted with picking either 2 or 4 heroes depending on if they have the battle pass. What do you think for someone coming into the game and not knowing too much about these heroes? What should they be looking for when they pick a hero?
If you're just starting, pick whatever seems fun. That is, it's so much. That's such an important aspect to getting hooked into a game, is make sure you're having fun, and the winning and losing will come. But just playing different heroes, trying different things, that'll help get you hooked. And you need to learn how different heroes play. So I wouldn't put too much stress on when you're just getting started on like, this is the best hero, I need to pick this one. Certainly a lot of the best heroes are the most fun. I have a 100% pick rate on Master Win, the panda. I think it's the most fun hero. Obviously my stream theme is really centered around pandas, so like I have to. And I highly encourage, I think that's a great hero to learn on as well, because you get to choose between all these different hero powers. But yeah, just whatever you think is the most fun. Some people really like the sort of minion type guided heroes. So something like Lord Jaraxxus for demons or Maleficent for mechs. They might not be the best heroes in the game, but they'll give you a very clear direction to start out with. And you can say, hey, I'm going to play mechs this game, or I'm going to play demons.
The tribal synergy is actually, and that's probably what those heroes are meant for anyway, is they don't necessarily are designed to be competitive in the meta, but they're designed to guide players down a tribal route, which will help them kind of figure out how to build a comp. All right, so let's say we've picked our hero. Maybe it's Master Win. What am I doing in my first few turns?
Yeah, the first 2 turns are going to be, turn 1, you're always going to buy a minion pretty much. Eventually, there's some situations where you'll hero power on turn 1. Those will be more obvious on certain heroes like Zarella or Yogg, where you're getting a minion. You're effectively sort of buying that minion with your hero power. But otherwise, you're just wanting to buy a minion. And then from turn 2 is when you really get into some of those decisions. And one of the things we sort of preach in terms of learning is learning the standard curve, and that's when you're going to level on turn 2 up to tier 2, and then it's just a balance from there of leveling and buying minions, much like the rest of the game. So it comes down to what you think your game plan is going to be, and then using those early turns to sort of start blazing your trail towards that end game.
Now, you mentioned standard curve. That's curve is something that people use a lot, a term that people use a lot in Battlegrounds. You hear standard curve, hero curve, there's a couple others. What are curves, and what do I need to know about them?
Yeah, so curves are basically referring to leveling curves. And so that means what turn are you leveling? And the reason that it matters is because if you get to higher tiers faster, you're of course going to open up the possibility of buying better minions. But if you level too fast, you're not going to have enough minions on your board and you're going to start to take a lot of damage. And so over the, lifespan of Battlegrounds, some of these curves have sort of been fleshed out, and the primary thing that they have in common is they help you efficiently spend your gold each turn, right? Between leveling and buying minions. And so, that's where I say, basically on turn 1, you're always going to buy a minion because you have 3 gold on turn 1. On turn 2, usually you're going to level because it costs 4 to level for most heroes, and you have 4 gold on turn 2. And so it's a very clean, efficient use of your gold. If you're constantly leveling and buying minions and you have 1 or 2 gold left over, that gold basically doesn't get used, or you use it on rolls or something, and but it's not influencing the strength of your board in the long term. And so by playing these sort of efficient curves and leveling on the correct turns, you'll basically have more gold than any of your opponents that don't. And because of that, you'll have more minions, stronger minions, whatever it may be, and that'll help you come out victorious.
So what's the difference between, say, a standard curve and a hero curve?
Sorry, what was that?
What's the difference? So I think is it called hero curve or something? What's the difference between a standard curve and a different curve? Like, I know a standard curve, you said you would level on 4, and then you would level on 6 or 7, where you have it costs 5 mana to level, and you have another opportunity by a minion. Like, what is the difference between those curves, just in general? Because a lot of times you'll hear streamers talk, "Hey, I'm gonna do this curve on this one," and it's not always clear what that means.
Yeah, so if you really do want an in-depth guide, there's the bgcurvesheet.com that lays out all the curves in detail. But standard curve basically consists of leveling on 4 gold, on 7 gold, and then on 8 or 9 gold. And then from there, it's kind of up to you on when you're leveling to 5 or 6, depending on, how your game's going.
Nice.
The other curves, there's stuff like Reform curve, which is when you have a 1 cost or sometimes 2 cost hero power, where you're using that to you're weaving your hero power in every turn, and so you end up staying on tier 1 a little bit longer, but eventually you sort of catch up to the leveling curve, and you end up being on tier 3 on 7 gold as well. And so that sort of, you match that benchmark. And then there's the 3-on-3 curve, which means that you're leveling very quickly and going to tier 3 on turn 3, which is the 5 gold turn. And usually you do that when you have a token and you have a hero power that facilitates going up faster. Either you're going to get a free discover from something like Gale Wing or Cookie, or you're a hero that has tempo and can sort of recover more strongly, like Lich King or Halakir. And so, that weak early turn and the couple turns it's going to take you to build up a board afterwards is sort of mitigated by that additional strength.
Yeah, except for me, I tend to turn 3-on-3 pretty much every time. At least I did in the quest meta. I haven't played too much since the new expansion hit, but I was almost always 3-on-3, and didn't always work out for me. But it was an opportunity. It was a plan that I would do.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely an interesting one, and one of the things that, again, like, as you improve, the curves become less and less rigid, right? These super high level players, they'll flex and go in between curves and do lots of different things on different heroes, just based on how a game is going, how many tokens you get, what minion types are in a given lobby. And so, the reason the curves are super helpful is because they give you a framework to think about the game and think about, okay, this is, how I'm going to do these things efficiently, like I talked about before. But as long as you're continuing to keep those same principles, you can really make a lot of things work in a lot of different ways.
I remember what blew my mind was I was watching Hafu one day, and she had a triple in the shop if you just bought the minion, and she just stayed on level. I mean, she leveled like 2, 3, 4, 5, and just took a bunch of damage, and then attempted the spike and get greater power by just getting up fast and then taking advantage of that triple in order to get a power minion and build a comp from there. So big brain in some levels there. Do you ever do things like that, or is that not a very good strategy if you're not that smart, I guess?
Yeah, I absolutely do that. I really like playing some aggressive lines. I mean, I have a pretty pretty heavy inclination towards the first or eighth style of gameplay. But I will say it is much more difficult to play aggressive lines when you're just starting, because part of what makes those lines possible is knowing how to recover and playing just on the line of, sort of the brink of death. It might not be immediate, but it could be something that's coming 2 or 3 turns down the line, and you're not even in a position to sort of recover tempo wise. And so if you don't have the ability to sort of ascertain how strong your board is, how strong your opponents are, that stabilization becomes a lot more difficult. So that's why you'll see like high level players in general play much more aggressive than you're used to seeing players play at lower MMRs. You'll see, games at lower MMRs generally take longer because people aren't leveling as fast and not playing as aggressively because it's hard otherwise. And like I said, in general, the game is a little bit slower because people are not using their gold efficiently, right? They might have stayed on 1 for an extra turn. I remember when I was just starting, it it was not immediately that I was like, level on turn 2, level on turn 2. There's a lot of games where I'm like, I'll just level on turn 3, and it's like, wait, I'm floating 2 gold and rolling, and it's like, wait a second, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's not super easy to grasp some of those concepts without someone telling you, because Battlegrounds is such a complicated game, and so it does take time to sort of learn those principles.
Okay, now let's say I'm not playing Jiraxis or some tribal kind of guided hero. It's early in the game. I've got a couple minions. How do I decide what kind of comp I'm going for, and how do I when do I start making these decisions? Because at some point you're just picking the best minion, maybe the minion with the best attack and health, or the biggest minion you can. But at some point you need to start shifting into a little bit more of synergy, or I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be tribal synergy. It can be divine shields and that kind of thing. When do I start figuring out, and how do I start figuring out what comp I should kind of go with?
Yeah, I mean, you really touched on it. Early, if it is a meta where a certain minion type is strong, you kind of also mentioned it earlier that, like, right now, undead are really strong. You can sort of try and play into those early, but in general, what you want to do is, like you said, pick up the strongest minion that's going to provide the most tempo to you, and again, doing so efficiently. And what will happen is, if you do that, different minions can sometimes be the strongest minion, and because of tribal synergies, sometimes, you'll pick up a Murloc because you have other Murlocs on board and you're buffing more things. Whereas if you have beasts on board, well, that Murloc's not going to make a lot of sense. And so into the mid game, you sort of build this skeleton of a comp based on those synergies that you've just picked up by making your basic decisions of, I'm going to pick up the strongest minion here because of those synergies. And then you'll sort of have that blueprint for, I'm going to try and lean into, Murlocs or beasts or mechs. And, in the mid game and late game, then that's what you start to look for.
Now, what about, I'm building a comp. It's not coming along quite as well as I would hope. Maybe I'm not finding the minions, the better minions at tier 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever it might be. And I start seeing something else in the shop that might be better. Like, that's called pivoting, right? Let's try to pivot to something else. Like, when should I do that? Like, or when should a new person do that? Or should a new person kind of like avoid doing that and just try to make it whatever their board is, build that up as best as possible? What would be your advice to somebody that's new? Like, let's say I'm building up Murlocs. I'm not finding any Toxfins. I'm not finding any of the stronger minions. But now I see 2 Busters in the shop. Like, what would you do?
Yeah, in general, so each of the comps sort of have, you'll hear them called a variety of things, either direction or sort of these keystone cards or scaling engines, whatever it may be, that can sort of complete your comp. So obviously a big popular one is Caligos for dragons, right? And so let's say you have a board of dragons and you're looking for Caligos. Well, at a certain point, if you don't find Caligos, you're not going to be able to play dragons because you don't have scaling for your board, And so each of these comps have these different keystone cards that if you don't find them at a certain point, and again, that's where experience comes in, and it's down to, how strong your opponents are, how strong you are, how long you can look for your sort of direction of choice. But at a certain point, once you're on tier 5 or tier 6, occasionally there's a couple cards that are on tier 4 that can really, give you scaling in that direction. But most of them are on tier 5 or tier 6. You're just looking to pick up your direction on those tiers and go into that. And obviously, it's ideal if you can find the direction that sort of fits with what you've built already. But if you're not finding something and it feels like, hey, time's running out, like I need to start building towards my end game board on, whether it's turn 8 or, turn 9, you can pick up, say, okay, there's 2 Omega Busters. I guess I'm Mex now. Like, and I'm gonna lean into that because that's what the game gave me. Like, would have loved to be Beast, but it's not happening. It's just, I'm not finding my Mama Bear. I'm not finding, one of these Beast cards that's gonna give me that scaling and direction. So we just gotta go with what the game gives us. It's kind of like that drafting aspect all over again.
See, I run into problems like what you're saying, like, hey, Caligos. I almost never have a good Caligos game. I'll win with dragons, and I'll win with dragons if I have, like, Terragosa and the dragon that buffs the guys on both sides of it, and the other cards around there, the Razor Scale or whatever. But, like, I always struggle with comps that have, like, a Bran or a Theo or Caligos, where I have to kind of keep a board slot free and start rifling things through to scale my boards. I always feel like I never make the good decisions on, hey, even though this mob is strong, I need to get rid of it to clear up space to then cycle things through and then make decisions at the end to be like, all right, what is that minion going to land on? How am I going to continue to cycle things through? I'm horrible at that.
Yeah, I mean it's not super easy, so you know, no need to feel bad about that. It is difficult balancing that, and there's a lot of understanding resources in Hearthstone, and the investment of I'm gonna spend a battle cry, or I'm gonna buy a neutral minion to start scaling things up, and passive scaling stuff that scaling sort of happens automatically. Something like the Terragosa promo Drake combo that you mentioned, something like Light Fang, a lot of the new undead stuff takes advantage of sort of passive scaling where you don't really have to actively invest resources into getting your scaling. They're definitely easier to execute because that scaling is built in. And there are sort of less decisions on determining is this worth it, or is this minion good enough.
Fair. And if you want to find like a lot of these streamers, you watch them do it and then you try to do it. It's definitely a different ball game when you're doing it on your own. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And you can definitely do a lot of fun things with Battlegrounds. And you'll find those synergies on your own a lot of times. Sometimes you won't realize that a couple cards go together, but and some of them are traps. Yeah, and you'll figure that out too when you think that you have a plan put together, and then that plan fails time after time, and you're not able to top 4 your lobby because whatever you're trying to, it just doesn't scale fast enough, or doesn't handle poison smurlocks or whatever it might be. So try things, but just kind of keep in mind as you're playing, like, hey, did this work? Did this not work? Why did it not work? And see if you can either improve upon it next time, or maybe avoid that trap when you come around to it.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well, do you have any other thoughts for somebody that might be new to Battlegrounds that they should try to keep an eye
on? I'll do a quick plug. I have a guide that talks about improvement and a lot of these things. I think that's a great resource. I as unbiased as I can be, I think it's probably the best written guide on how to improve in Battlegrounds. Namely because there's not many. But it is a great resource. And the other thing is just, playing, and getting that experience, and sort of actively being engaged and improving, and looking at your plays and saying, hey, what went wrong? And if you're having trouble with that, that's when you can turn to streams and ask and get an outside opinion. And it can be super helpful in finding a stream or a streamer that you engage with well. I think it's great, and the most important thing is to just make sure you're having fun. Like I said, it's impossible to get better at a game, to continue to play a game, if you're not having a good time.
Yeah, I never understood that. People, they're like, oh, I'm not having fun. Well, then why are you still playing? Like, take a break, go do something else.
Yeah, exactly. It's a game, right?
Absolutely. And actually, one last streamer to mention, Swaybay is fantastic to watch if you want to interact and really kind of learn a lot and understand what's going on. Especially if you want to do some of the more unique things in the game and meme and attempt crazy things. Definitely a great watch right there.
Yeah, Sway is great.
But I think I'm getting full, and I think it's just about time for dessert. Pocky, thanks for being on. I'm looking forward to having you on next week, talk about the actual current meta, and we could probably break down Undead a little bit more. I know that it's a little tough to play Undead right now because everybody's going Undead, and there's a limited minion pool, so if you see 4 or 5 people going Undead, it might be time to pick something else.
Yeah, for sure.
But so, where can people find you on your socials?
I am on almost every social. Of course, Twitch, probably the best place. My hub. Pocky Plays. I'm on Twitter as @Pocky_plays. And then YouTube is another great resource where I do a lot of not necessarily gameplay videos, but talking about the game and whether it's current events, whether it's patch stuff, or any of that sort of stuff. What are the good heroes? You can check out my YouTube, which is also Pocky Plays.
Fantastic. And you can find me at Tito Santana HS on both Twitter and Twitch. Like I said, if you want to check out the show match that we just had with Wicked Good and Sidisi, the VOD is up. We also have the VOD for the match we had with Doc and Smarms. And Doc, Doc, are you back?
Oh, I've been here.
Oh, okay. Doc, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Twitch at DocMcButt. And you can email. We didn't plug the email yet, did we?
We have not.
Yeah, so you can email the show at breadandbutterhs@gmail.com.
And we also have Discord. If you just reach out to one of us, we will get you the link for that. Pocky, you got anybody you'd like to shout out this week?
You guys for having me on. I guess ridiculous that, we talked to that. I was just on the Angry Chicken. I don't know if I'm supposed to plug competitors, but I've been enjoying the podcast So.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
We are one. The TAC is fantastic, and we're wishing Joss all the best. 2, we are not a competitor of the Angry Chicken. We are not.
Yeah. Like I said, the whole Hearthstone community is so great. So I always just trust that it's all about altruism.
Oh, absolutely.
Always keep an altruistic point of view on everything. So, and I mean, like I said, all the other great streamers and members of the community, I really, am thankful, and shout out to my community for being great, which includes a lot of those streamers. So, but like I said, just the Hearthstone community in general.
How about yourself, Doc? Anybody you'd like to shout out this week?
Yeah, I have a couple. First off, Pocky, thank you so much for going from being on TAC to being down here with us, and it's been an enjoyable time. Thank you so much. I also want to thank my partner. As we mentioned on the top of the show, been together for a year, and it's been great. She's a pretty awesome person. And then my last shout out, I want to shout out to my DM for my TTRPG group, Dame Kage. His narration for a funeral in our D&D session last night made 3 out of the 4 players cry. And I had to mute my mic just because it was very moving and it was just very great DMing. And so I just want to give him a shout out because I feel like that deserves it. Tito, how about yourself?
I want to thank Dragon Rider, Sid, and Wicked for putting up with me over the last month as I've been getting the show match together, and then actually, especially Dragon Rider, who did a fantastic job with production last night, and it was a good time. And that's about it. So, Pocky, we look forward to having you again next week. Thank you for filling in at the last minute because we had another guest that wasn't able to make it, so we very much appreciate it. But I think that's the end of the show, guys. I think we're toast.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.